Just hit record. We've got people joining now.
Okay.
Just got a few people sort of coming into the waiting room now, so we'll give it a few minutes before we get started.
Yes.
Cool.
Hello to anyone joining the call. We will be starting the presentation shortly. Just going to give it a few more minutes just to let other people join. Just to let you know, the session is being recorded today as well, but everyone's automatically off camera. Just wait a few more minutes. Can see there's more people joining now. Give it one more minute. Okay, I think it's safe to start. Just to inform anyone who's just joined the call, this session will be recorded and will be available to watch on YouTube at a later date. I think everyone's automatically off camera, so there's no need to worry about that. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat as we go along, and we can try and answer those for you at the end. Okay, Shemai, Prynhawn da pawb, croeso, welcome to the Apprentices second show and tell. My name is Ruth Garner. I'm one of the user-centered design apprentices at the Centre for Digital Public Services, along with Sarah Floyd and Alex Wagstaff. In this presentation, we're going to cover our user research in college placement, any additional training we've done, and just talk about our overall thoughts on the last 3 months of the apprenticeship. So I'm just going to kick off the presentation now by talking a little bit about our introduction to our second placement on our apprenticeship, which was user research. So when we first started our user research placement back at the beginning of January, we were lucky enough to have 2 in-person days in Spark in Cardiff that was organised and facilitated by Gabby and Andrew, who are the senior user researchers of the team at Centre for Digital Public Services, or CDPS. On our first day, we were given a really in-depth introduction to user research. We gained a lot of knowledge about the role itself and the tools and processes that are used and carried out in research. We learned about user research plans and discussion guides, and were given a few real-life examples of these that were being used for some of the team's projects that they were working on. We were also given some tips and advice on how to best approach note-taking for research, and we were also made aware about the strong ethical principles and morals that come with the responsibility of being a user researcher. So at the end of our first day, we were given a problem brief where we individually had to plan and write our own plans and discussion guides for testing. Then the second day was focused around prepping and running our own usability tests. Some of the members of the user research team performed interview role plays to show us what's expected of the facilitators who lead these research sessions. And after creating our discussion guides with the support from the team, we all ran usability tests with internal members of staff who had kindly volunteered to take part in these testing sessions for us. Most participants did this remotely and joined via a Teams call with us, apart from one person who did come into Spark and did it with us in person. So whilst these were being facilitated by us one at a time, the other two apprentices stayed in a different room off camera, along with Gabby and Andrew, to write down some notes on each session, where we then had a big debrief at the very end. These 2 days really helped to equip us early on with the relevant knowledge and practical experience to carry with us for the rest of our placement. And it was also just really nice to meet the team in person right at the beginning. So after this introduction, we were all then assigned a project to shadow on for the next 3 months, along with the user researcher of that project who was going to act as our mentor. So I'll now hand it over to Alex, who's going to talk about her shadowing experience.
So for the first half of my placement, I shadowed Promise Michael, who is working on the Digital Service Manual project. The team are working on building a service manual to help organisations in meeting the Digital Service Standards for Wales, which was published by Welsh Government in March 2022. I was present through the end stages of the alpha phase, and the team have now moved on to the beta phase. I attended stand-ups and group meetings regularly, focusing on observing Promise's role within the team as the user researcher. And once I had enough of the background knowledge, I was able to then assist Promise on some of her user researcher tasks. So Promise ran multiple user testing sessions, and using the discussion guide she wrote, I was able to help out with those and note take on a couple of those sessions. I also observed and assisted on user research analysis sessions and contributed to writing the report on the user research findings, which will help inform the next stage of the project going into the beta phase. And throughout my time shadowing Promise, we had like one-to-one meetings and mentoring sessions, which gave me a chance to ask questions, learn more about the methods and techniques she was using, and really being able to see a qualified user researcher in action gave me something to aim for when I went on to run my own research project. So working closely with Promise at the start of the placement was really valuable for my learning.
So I'll be sharing my experience of shadowing Tom Brame during my user research placement. Tom was my mentor during this period, and I had the opportunity to shadow him on the planning project. During my time, I was involved in various activities and gained valuable experiences. I observed subject matter experts with expert interviews with heads of planning from different authorities in Wales. One of my tasks was note-taking during these interviews to capture important insights. There was a skill to note-taking, and I was glad of the opportunity to practice this. Additionally, I assisted in planning a screener survey for future user interviews on the project. I conducted 2 usability interviews for the planning portal with internal participants under Tom's guidance, and I really enjoyed completing the usability testing. It was really interesting to see how people interacted and responded differently to using the portal. Following the interviews, we collaborated on thematic analysis to identify key insights from the usability testing results. And I loved seeing how the results from my usability interviews helped to give weight to some of the themes that we had identified. Beyond specific project tasks, I actively participated in team activities. This included attending stand-ups, retrospectives, and sprint reviews as a member of both the user research team and the planning project team. Tom provided invaluable mentorship through regular one-to-one catch-up sessions. These sessions were helpful in clarifying any uncertainties I had and seeking advice on my work and college unit. I felt as though I was able to ask any questions I may have had without them being viewed as silly. Shadowing provided me with a real-life insight into the role of a user researcher. I gained a comprehensive understanding of the tasks, responsibilities, and integration within a multidisciplinary team. Overall, my shadowing experience was immensely beneficial.
So I was invited to participate and shadow on the Digital Maternity Cymru project, where Jana Blake was my user research mentor. Jana gave me access to her user research plan and discussion guide to get me up to date with what the project entailed and what the purpose of the research was. I was also shown the project prototypes to help further my understanding of the concept that was eventually going to be tested by users. I was invited to project stand-up meetings to stay informed about the progression and keep on track of what other team members' work contributions were. I also observed a meeting with the project stakeholders, which enabled me to get up to date with the progression of the project, what stage it was in there and then, and hear feedback from them. It was also useful for me to know how the team conversed and presented to their stakeholders, as this may be useful for me to know in the future. Me and Jana had one-to-one catch-up meetings that were really helpful, as it allowed me the chance to be in a safe space and ask any questions I had about the project, get clarification of what was going on and understand what was expected of me. During one of those catch-ups, we set out small objectives for me to help stay on track and help me achieve what I wanted to achieve in the time that we had together. And it also allowed Jana to try and help me achieve those goals as well. And then based on my objectives, I then had the opportunity to observe 2 of the user prototype concept testing sessions and was able to note take for one of them. And this was great practice for me, as it was the first time I'd properly done note taking, and I think it's definitely harder than it looks, but I'm glad I had the chance to do it. And I personally feel that since then I've gotten slightly better at it now, which is good. And then finally, my last contributions to the project were to take part in analysing the gathered data, tagging it, and then splitting the insights off into different themes that we had identified. And this was done in a big group session on Miro and gave me a great insight into how to potentially tackle the analysis stage of a research project. Overall, I really enjoyed being part of this project, as I thought the concept and research that was being carried out was personally really interesting. And I had a perfect balance of shadowing and doing, which really helped me in my learning. And I was able to understand how different roles come together to work on a specific project. And Jana was also a fantastic mentor and really used her knowledge and expertise to give me great advice and guidance. And she really inspired me to work and think like a user researcher. So after having a good few weeks of shadowing, we were then given the chance to act as proper user researchers for our own internal mini projects to allow us the time and space to take what we'd learned and put it to practice in a small scale, low risk environment. Over to you, Sarah.
So I will be sharing my experience of working on an internal user research project with the Learn Digital Skills team. Specifically, they tasked me with considering user research for their work on minimum viable capabilities. My journey began with an initial meeting with Pete, Lauren and Ebony to understand the project's background and where user research could contribute. We kicked off by diving into an assumption mapping session, a session aimed at identifying crucial unknowns that research could shed light on. Equipped with guidance from Andrew, I took the lead in facilitating the assumption mapping session. I was a little nervous, as this was the first session I'd led on with the team. This exercise, though, helped us to pinpoint key areas within the problem space that needed further exploration through research. I was pleased with how the session went and felt that it was beneficial in highlighting some of the uncertainties within the project. After analysing the results of the assumption mapping, it was decided that external user research with staff in public services within Wales would be beneficial. So due to the time constraints, I could not conduct external user research, but I prepared a user research plan and discussion guide to help support the project. Writing a discussion guide was harder than I expected. I was trying to keep in mind that the discussion could go in multiple directions. It was also hugely valuable to share it with Andrew, who made sure to call me out if bias was taking over in some lines of questioning. Despite not being able to conduct external research, I supported Ruth and Alex with their projects by assisting in user interviews, usability testing and note-taking. In addition to hands-on research activities, I also contributed to analysis, reporting findings and providing feedback to stakeholders. My involvement in this user research project provided valuable experience in learning and implementing research activities and supporting project teams.
So I chose to run a small internal research project on a user need that my line manager and my line manager and I identified whilst we were discussing training. So we discussed that how at the CDPS there is currently no official route to review feedback from colleagues for general training opportunities for your personal development. Staff are therefore probably relying on word of mouth, which can sometimes be inefficient, or online reviews, which do run the risk of being biased. Therefore, we both felt that it would be beneficial for staff to have access to a library of some sort where they can view feedback and recommendations from colleagues before booking onto a course, and provide their own unbiased feedback on training that they partake in. So to kick off my project, I wrote up a user research plan using the CDPS's template with the support of our user research mentor, Andrew. And then I drew up a prototype feedback form and began building 2 very basic library prototypes on SharePoint, which is the most frequently used file sharing platform currently at the CDPS. And I just populated this with dummy forms. I would have liked to spend more time on these prototypes, but I did have to keep my focus on the user research elements of this project to make the most out of this placement. Fortunately, I am able to take this project into my current placement in interaction design, which will be a great opportunity to make good use of my research findings and hopefully produce an even better library. So to inform the early stages of my project, I also ran an assumption mapping workshop with a range of colleagues from different areas of the CDPS, and also held one-to-one meetings with stakeholders who could provide me with some expert insights into my project. I used these insights to write up a discussion guide for the user interviews and user testing sessions I would facilitate down the line. So once we were ready to start recruiting for our user research sessions, us apprentices worked together to write a recruitment screener survey for our respective projects and sent this out in our general channel in Slack. And then we apprentices took it in turns to facilitate and note take on each other's user research sessions. It was a really good way to practice getting involved in each other's sessions, as it made us more mindful in writing our discussion guides in a way which was accessible for others and gave us an opportunity to have a go at running a session using a discussion guide written by someone else. Once we completed all of our user research sessions, we held a group theming session to organise our findings. We took this opportunity to involve Jack Farr, who was on placement from Cardiff University as part of his real-world research module. He was a great help, and we do hope that it was useful for him to have a peek into the world of user research and user-centred design. And I personally hope that we get more opportunities like this to work with other apprentices, students or trainees, as I think learning alongside other learners can really give you a chance to form new perspective on things as you work collaboratively through problems and tasks which are new to everyone. And once we split our research findings into themes and topics, Sarah and I went on to writing up the report, again using a very handy template from the CDPS. Running my own mini project has been very confidence building, and it's been really satisfying being able to go off in my own direction and work on something that I feel is both achievable and will hopefully benefit my colleagues one day.
So my assigned user research mini project for the end of our placement was to look into the internal comms weekly roundup of the organisation, which is sent out by Gemma, who is a communications officer at CDPS. So to get started on how to tackle the start of research on a project, we had a great workshop in assumption mapping that was run by Andrew. Assumption mapping can be used to help to clearly understand the problem at hand, bring teams together to collaborate, explore and identify potential assumptions they might have about the problem and what users' perspectives might be. So shortly after this, I then planned, organised and facilitated my own assumption mapping session with Gemma and Charlotte from comms, and also had Andrew there to observe and support me. From that session, we were able to note down assumptions we had about the potential reasons as to why there was a lack of clicks and general engagement from staff with the current delivery of the weekly roundup. So after this session, I was able to identify the key unknown areas that needed to be uncovered through research. From here, I started to create a user research plan for the project, chose my testing methodology, which was user interviews, created a discussion guide and worked with Alex and Sarah to create a recruitment screener survey for internal staff, which was also used to recruit participants for Alex's internal mini project as well. So I facilitated a total of 3 interviews for this project and had Sarah facilitate 2 of them, whilst either myself or Alex was note-taking during the session. We interviewed staff members who varied in both job role and length of how long they'd been working at CDPS, just to ensure there was less chance of bias. And then after gathering some really interesting insights, myself and Sarah collaborated on a report of the research findings, which we then formally presented back to our internal stakeholder, Gemma. Having the chance to have our own mini projects to plan and deliver was really useful after all the learning we'd done in our introduction days and shadowing projects. I feel we had great support from the user research team, but were still given enough freedom and space to learn, experiment and be creative, which was both exciting and rewarding. Now over to Alex, who will discuss what we've been doing in college.
So the learning objectives provided by Agorid for the user research unit has provided us with a really good basis to guide our placement. Here I've listed the overarching learning objectives, but I won't read them all out. But if you are interested, you can find more detail on the Agorid website. We aim to meet all of these learning objectives through placement activities and supplemented this with independent desk research and writing activities. We also completed a unit on digital readability. Again, I've listed the main learning objectives below and more detail can be found on the website. And as part of this unit, we were asked to complete a write-up and deliver a presentation to our college tutor on a digital readability tool of our choice. So just to give you a bit of a taste of what we covered, here are the applications we each chose to present. So I covered the Hemingway editor, and the basic version is free to access online, and it can help you improve the readability of your content by measuring its reading age and giving you some writing tips to simplify your text. This tool is potentially very useful as the UK government recommends that your content, that you aim for your content to have a reading age of around 9 to promote accessibility. Ruth covered the Easy Reader Chrome extension, which is an application that blurs out distracting advertisements on websites. This is potentially extremely helpful for people who have ADHD or dyslexia, as it can help you keep focused on the important text. It's also useful for really anyone who does extensive research online, such as university students, if ads get in the way of scouring text quickly. And Sarah covered the web extension Help-a-Bird, which has a selection of tools which can help improve readability for those who struggle with reading. It offers font customization, an immersive reader, and a dyslexia ruler, which can be applied to any web page. During her presentation, Sarah also took the time to point out that ideally accessibility should be built into platforms through collaborative design and development, so that the need for apps such as this is minimised. However, she did note that this isn't always done by web developers and designers, so having these apps available is very important for accessibility. So regarding our college work, we experimented with different methods of evidencing our work throughout this placement. So we made screen recordings with voiceover to showcase our prototypes and Miro boards where we explained our processes and learnings. And we also recorded meetings with our colleagues, such as our assumption mapping workshops and user research sessions, as well as sessions where we apprentices worked collaboratively on a task. We'll continue to try out new ways of submitting evidence as we continue through our placements. And we also had fortnightly catch-ups with our college tutor to keep him updated with our progress, as well as monthly review sessions as standard. So we have been also been involved in increasing awareness of our apprenticeship in some small ways. And we were asked by Agorid to make recordings of ourselves reflecting on our experience so far, which they have shared on their LinkedIn page. This has been a good opportunity to help promote this new apprenticeship scheme, and we do hope to have some further opportunities to drum up some more interest in the future.
So in addition to our placement, we completed some additional training. The Learn Digital Skills team were looking for a group of internal participants to test their new user research fundamentals course. We felt this would be interesting to join, as it would be useful to receive additional training in user research, seeing as we were currently on the placement. The course was split into 9 two-hour sessions, with the first week being involved in training every day. The course was a mix of learning and practical activities, and it focused on generative and evaluative user research. There was a small group of internal staff completing the training, and it was great working with staff we wouldn't necessarily meet up with.
Initially, it felt a bit unusual for us to attend a user research fundamentals course as our placement was coming to an end. However, it was still really useful for us as it validated and confirmed things we'd already previously learned. And it was also just a good opportunity to get more practical experience and skills by completing tasks and doing role play. I think we felt it was a great way to round off our user research placement.
I would also like to quickly mention that alongside our college work and placement activities, we have been encouraged to take part in some additional training from external providers. And we completed some accessibility training for UX and visual designers from HSBC in February. And we completed a stakeholder management training course from Process Management International in March and April. Taking part in training such as this has been a good way to broaden our awareness of user-centered design and build on some other skills that we foresee being useful for our career progression.
So what's next for the apprentices? We are halfway through our placements, having completed content design and user research. We have placements in interaction and service design left to complete. All the placements will culminate in us completing a final user-centered design project. We're at the start of our interaction design placement now and have started the process of shadowing Liam. Shadowing is invaluable as it gives us a glimpse of the day-to-day activities that are expected of an interaction designer, as well as seeing how the role fits in within a project team. Our placement will involve some face-to-face training and upskilling sessions, as well as online learning. We will be learning to use Figma for prototyping, and this will be done through a combination of learning in role and training through college. We will be working on mini projects again as a product of our placements so that we can learn skills and meet criteria for our college units. We've enjoyed the freedom of working individually and collaboratively as a three to complete our past mini projects. And the aim is to do the same during our interaction placement. Towards the end of this placement, we will also be completing a 3-day course on an introduction to service design by ServiceWorks. We're looking forward to the next placement and what we can achieve. We will now give some personal reflections on our last placement.
So overall, I really enjoyed the last 3 months in a user research placement. I feel that from the beginning, the placement was really well delivered and organised, and our introduction days at Spark filled us with the relevant knowledge, skills and confidence we needed to carry with us for the duration of the placement. We really enjoyed learning through doing on our first placement in content design, but this time I think it was a great idea to split us up and put us on individual projects to shadow, which allowed us to observe how things are done before getting our hands dirty. I thought it was so useful to have our own user research mentors, knowing I had a specific person who I could just learn from or ask as many silly questions as I wanted to was really comforting for me. The support we had from Gabby and Andrew was amazing as they really mastered putting a metaphorical hand on our back to support us as opposed to holding our hand throughout the whole placement. I found the diverse array of training opportunities we've had in the last few months to be incredibly insightful. Each training session has offered a unique perspective and skill set, which I feel has contributed to my professional growth in ways I didn't expect. And finally, I really enjoyed having a bit of independence and control and being assigned our user research internal mini projects. And during that time, I feel I've learned skills in assumption mapping, independent working, user testing, analysing data, working with project stakeholders, and generally just skills in presentation, communication and public speaking, which this role contains a lot of.
So I really appreciated the balance that we had during our user research placement between learning by observing our colleagues and running our own projects and conducting our own desk research. The user research team that we found ourselves in at the CDPS have been incredibly supportive and offered so many ways for us to observe their work and get involved wherever possible. And I also found running my own projects really built my confidence to a place where I can now truly envision myself being ready to enter the professional world of user-centered design once we graduate from this apprenticeship. And I'm also grateful that I'm able to take my Library of Training Resources project further into the interaction design placement that we are currently in, so that I can hopefully produce something that my colleagues will find useful.
So the face-to-face sessions that we had at the beginning of the placement were a great icebreaker and helped build rapport with the team. Gabby and Andrew made sure to support us through our placement, but gave us enough room to take the lead where possible. I had initial nerves about completing usability testing on our second in-person day, but doing it internally provided a sense of security, and it also helped me in future sessions to know that I had done this before and when I was significantly less prepared. The mentoring and shadowing sessions were great for understanding the role of user research within CDPS. Everyone was really welcoming in the planning project, and I learned about how projects run during a discovery phase. Whilst I didn't get to complete user research for my mini project, I focused on trying to create a user research plan and discussion guide that would be valuable to the team. I learned there was a skill to creating a good discussion guide, and I was grateful to Andrew for making me check my bias, something that I'm going to keep being mindful of. Conducting user interviews was a highlight of my placement, and I felt I grew in confidence with each one. I learned there was a skill to conducting a good interview to get the best from a participant, and these are skills that I'm keen to improve on. Our college unit for user research required quite a lot of evidence, which I feel we became skilled at collecting by recording sessions or filming ourselves talking about what we'd learnt. And much like the content design placement, I felt that we were all hitting our stride as the placement came to an end. I'm grateful for the experiences and the support of the user research team. I feel it's given me some practical skills and knowledge that can be built upon if I choose to pursue a career in user research. I'm looking forward to learning about interaction design and getting started on our mini project. And I'm keen to learn about creative thinking and upskill in this area. I'm also hopeful to take off some more college units and participate in any opportunities that may come our way. So that concludes our show and tell. So we can answer any questions that you may have now. Thank you.
I'll just add there, if anybody has any questions, you're more than welcome to pop them in the chat, or if you'd like to come in and ask a question, just raise your hand and I can pop you off mute. I'll just wait a couple of minutes just in case anything comes through. Oh, Emma's put her hand up. I'll allow you to talk now, Emma.
Can you hear me? Good afternoon.
That's great. Thank you.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much for that presentation. That was really, really insightful. And for somebody who's currently recruiting to a user research assistant post, it was really helpful to get an insight into what you've been experiencing. I just wondered what advice you would give me as somebody welcoming a user research assistant into my team in terms of what I can do to support that person into that role.
I think that the best way you can support them when they're first joining is just allow them to have that time and space and permission to just sit in on as many different kinds of activities that they can, just shadowing really, and also making sure that they're being given the context for each different kind of activity that they do. Like I've never heard of an assumption mapping workshop, so we had Andrew to talk us through that and explain what it was so that we could join in a session, and just having that context is completely necessary, I think, to get involved early on.
Fantastic,
Yeah,
thank
I'll
you.
agree with that because I think and as much shadowing as possible, but I feel like also sometimes at the end of meetings it was also really useful for us to have like kind of a write-up of the context of that meeting, just to kind of further our understanding and keep it in our heads. So I think just finding the balance of that is useful.
Yeah, and having perhaps an appointed person that you can go to with any questions that you may have, because I would sometimes sit in on a shadowing session, and if it was an external interview, I obviously didn't want to stop those going ahead and ask questions during them, but it was nice to have somebody that I could go back to afterwards and say, oh, can you explain this to me, or what would you do in this situation, so that you can kind of clarify any questions that you may have.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's so helpful. And yeah, good luck with the rest of your journey. I'm looking forward to hearing more, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you. Myra's put a question in the chat. Can you say a bit more about how you work together and support each other? We work really closely together. We have apprentice catch-ups just with us three once a week, and then we have two stand-up meetings with Lauren a week as well. And throughout the user research placement, even though about halfway through we did branch off into doing our own things, we were always doing like learning sessions together, and we were constantly updating each other on what we were doing in our own project and sort of getting involved in each other's projects in some smaller ways. And that helped keep us like really tight knit, and I think really supported me in my learning and my confidence as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think because we were observing different projects, we each, which were all at different phases, we were each experiencing elements of user research that were slightly different. So I observed like creating a screener survey, and then I kind of fed back what I had learnt to Ruth and Alex. And I think Alex had experienced kind of doing some report writing, and she fed back to myself and Ruth. So anything that we were learning that we felt could be shared, we tried to keep each other kind of up to date with it.
Yeah, and I think having kind of constant communication and having those catch-up meetings is really useful, because of course the organisation do a great job at supporting us and answering any questions we have, but it's just nice knowing you have a small support network with people who are in the same boat as you and who might have the same entry level of experience, because we found that we work really well together when we collaborate on things. So I think that's also given us some practice and experience on how to kind of work as a team as well. And I think having that aspect has been one of the things that has contributed to building my confidence in the apprenticeship.
I can see Lauren's written, is there anything that you wish you'd had an opportunity to do during this placement, or anything that you feel was missing? Personally, I think we had quite a comprehensive introduction to user research. I think the two in-person days, as well as the kind of like 2 days online that we did, kind of gave us a really good grounding in elements of user research, and we were encouraged to kind of go off and do our own kind of learning as well. I think just time just kind of disappears, I think, once you get involved in a placement, and before you know it, it just 3 months has gone. So if we could have more time, that would be great. But obviously we are working to an apprenticeship as well, so that's understandable.
Yeah, I agree. I think we packed in as much as we could have really.
Yeah.
I think that's everything in terms of questions. There was one more, I think, from Chelsea in the chat, and I think probably you best to answer this. What was the name of the extension for Chrome that blurs videos to allow for focus?
I think that was mine. Oh, what's it called? I think it's called Easy Reader, which is, yeah, it's a Chrome extension that kind of blurs out kind of pop-up ads that can be distracting. So kind of really useful for people who have ADHD or dyslexia. There were kind of some downsides to it though, because it kind of blurs out distractions, but it doesn't get rid of them entirely. So I think it depends how useful you find it. But yeah, it's called Easy Reader.
Lovely, and I think that might be it for questions now. Oh no, we've got one more from Harriet, sorry. So how has the apprenticeship affected the way you think about your careers?
I think for me personally, my future career has always been like the big unknown. Like I've known that I've wanted to work my way up to something, but I don't really know what that is. But being able to do this and really watch people do the jobs that I'm considering. Like, it's answered a lot of questions for me and really clarified that this is what I want to do. And so it's just really built my confidence in knowing what I want out of my career longer term.
Yeah, I think for me, being a career changer, it was stepping into the unknown massively. I was quite nervous about starting from scratch again, but I really feel like an apprenticeship is the best possible way that I could have changed career. I'm upskilling whilst on job, learning from people that are already doing it, having a huge network of people that I can ask advice and help from, whilst kind of upskilling myself and still being able to bring some of the skills that I have already kind of learnt and gained from my previous career. So for me, it allowed me to take the leap and change careers, and yeah, I can see roles for myself in the future.
Yeah, I think Sarah just said it perfectly, exactly how I feel. And I just think there should be more apprenticeships, because they're just such a good opportunity for you to kind of go into the unknown and just upskill and learn so much in a short period of time. Like, even in the last 7 or 8 months I think we've been here, we've learned so much, and I just think we're really lucky to be able to go into the different areas of UCD and trial them all out. So yeah, we'll see what we go for in the end, but at this point it's been really good so far.
And I think that's it now from questions. I don't know, Ruth, if you want to do a quick closing before we all head off.
Yes, if there aren't any more questions, thank you so much for attending today. The recording will be put onto YouTube at some point, I think, so keep your eyes peeled for that. If anyone missed it, you can forward it on to them. And thank you very much.
Diolch, thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye.